Now let's talk about our next clustering algorithm, hierarchical agglomerative clustering. With hierarchical agglomerative clustering, we'll try to continuously split out and merge new clusters successively until we reach a level of convergence. Now let's see how hierarchical agglomerative clustering actually works. So here we're using the same example as before, and we're going to try and come up with our different clusters. For hierarchical agglomerative clustering, we start off by looking at the points and identifying the pair which has the minimal distance. So notice here, again, that the distance becomes a very important factor in the success of our clustering algorithm. So we need to keep into account which distance metrics we're actually using. We see that these 2 points that we have in green are the closest, so we color code them here to highlight that these are going to be our first pair. And then we continue to do this, again looking for the next closest pair of points. And the next closest pair. And we can keep doing this. But the next closest pair can actually be a pair of clusters. So we might have 2 different clusters, or a cluster and a point that are going to be closest to one another. It doesn't necessarily just have to be 2 different points. Now, how we define the distance from a cluster to a point, or from a cluster to another cluster, will depend on our linkage criterion. And we'll expand on this a bit later, but for the distance to a particular cluster, maybe it's going to be the average of points in a given cluster and the distance to that average of given points, or maybe it's the minimal distance between all points in a given cluster to that point, so just taking the minimum distance. And if it's a pair of clusters, if we do find it's a cluster that is the closest point, then we can go ahead and merge them into their own cluster. So we see that, again, we don't have that, but here we move one more step, and we see that the blue and the green that we had merge together into the 2 greens. And we can continue to see that we can create more and more clusters, and we keep going, creating each one of our pairs, moving forward, and now we see some of them merging together, merging further together. We have those red dots all creating their own cluster, and now the number of clusters will start to reduce as we keep moving forward, each one of them combining together. And at this point, looking here, we're at 6 different clusters. We can run again and we get down to 5 clusters as we continue to find the closest linkage. Now we're down to 4, and again, as we continue to move up that ladder, we can continue to merge these different clusters together, and then we're at 3 different clusters, at 2 different clusters, and if we were to continue this, we can end up with 1 large cluster. So this means that if we allow this to continue, eventually we don't have clusters, so we have to come up with some type of stopping criteria when we're using agglomerative clustering.